July 21st, 2024, the day the Earth stood still.
War of the...
Oh, right.
You idiot. You idiot. I thought you were joking.
Oh, no,
You
no,
seriously
no.
thought that?
July 21st, 2024, War of the Worlds,
War were declared.
1953.
Okay.
So many iterations of this one. We're talking about the one in Technicolor, if you're confused.
Yeah. The one with Tom Cruise.
I think I'm just going to start off with a recommendation first.
Okay.
Because hitherto this, either it has not mattered if I tell you the plot of the movie, or it has not been a movie I would recommend for you to watch. But in a Eric and Gerbunts first, I have a recommendation. You should watch this movie. I think this is a good movie, like actually a good movie,
Okay.
and it bears watching. Why? I don't know. The special effects are really good. It's in Technicolor, the future of cinema. The acting's all right, and the concepts are explored in a way that I found satisfying. And we'll talk more about that, but I just wanted to say that before we...
I agree. I would recommend watching this movie just for its own merits. Actually, like, and maybe for the first time in this series, like, it's always been like, well, you know, if you're like a fan of blah, 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 or you want to learn about how movies were in 1909, you should watch. But this one, it's like, yeah, it's actually, like, enjoyable to watch now, still. Before we get into it, let me just give a short summary, just an overall picture of the movie.
Okay. Overall, no.
The year, 2024. The review, War of the Worlds.
Okay.
The year, 1953. See our last video, but Joseph Stalin dies.
Yes.
The Korean War ends. Queen Elizabeth II is crowned. 4 years before Sputnik is launched. So, an unknown object crashes near a small town in California. Local scientist Dr. Forrester and college lecturer Sylvia Van Buren, with local authorities, investigate this object. Similar objects are found impacting various places all around the world at the same time. They turn out to be Martian invaders. The military tries to fight off the invaders, but against their energy shields and heat rays, all attempts at resistance prove futile. Even atomic weapons do nothing. Dr. Forrester and Sylvia are confronted up close with a Martian and are able to get some of its blood and technology for study. As the world descends into mass hysteria and panic, Dr. Forrester and team make a desperate attempt to discover any weakness in the aliens by studying these samples they have. However, aforementioned mass panic causes the public at large to swirly these nerds, steal their microscopes, and doom any attempt at salvation. Everyone resigns themselves to death and waits for the inevitable. Out of nowhere, all of the aliens just die. E. coli saves the day, and maybe Jesus helped. The end. Woo! USA! USA!
So, with that out of the way...
That's generally what happens.
Yeah.
Aliens invade, they can't stop them, and then they Deus Ex Machina just all die at the end.
Yes.
And we're left with more questions than answers.
So I started watching this movie, and, you know, it started off like any other movie that we've seen so far. Black and white. You know,
It was black and white?
It was the very beginning, right?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Black and white, there's like a narrator, and then, you know, the next scene suddenly is in color. And so this film, I think, was restored in 4K, recently re-released. And so I thought, oh, maybe I'm just watching some, you know, colorization that didn't exist back then. So I looked it up, like, am I watching the original version? And I was. And it was so good. It looks so good. The color... it just like pops off the screen. And so I was pleasantly surprised. And so from the very beginning of this movie, especially like the first 45 minutes of this movie, I was pretty hooked, and it was shocking to me that I was so invested.
I was pretty surprised too, for the same reason. Because, you know, you think of movies like you say, hey, I'm going to watch like a Technicolor film picture from 1953. You're like, oh, it's going to be boring and slow, whatever. You know, like these movies that we've been watching so far are pretty like short, fast, and like paced pretty well. It's like an hour and 20 minutes. You know, like aliens invade, they screw up everything, they destroy the whole Earth, kind of. Not really, but you know what I mean. Like they're all over the planet, and it's like it's 120 minutes. You're like, wow, it's got to move pretty fast to resolve that, and it does. Like,
and I think these movies are hitting like a sweet spot. The movies of the past that we saw, it's sort of like all business. You know, the people who are in it, they're not really people. They're kind of just ideas, or, you know, this is the person that does this. This movie has that, right? Where people are straightforward. They get to the point. They do things in a methodical way, but it adds a little bit of like emotional complexity, some like romantic subplot, and I think people can act a little bit like themselves, but it's not so far in that direction where it feels like I'm just watching a drama with some sci-fi elements sprinkled in.
I don't know when you want to talk about this. Do you want to talk about Dr. Forrester and his main squeeze? The whole thing was a little funny.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't like bad. I found it kind of humorous though, like their entire interaction. Because like, he shows up, he's like this handsome guy, and she's like, "Oh, I just love this Dr. Forrester. He's the smartest." And she doesn't know who she's talking to
Sylvia.
him. Yeah, Sylvia Van Buren. She doesn't know she's talking to him, and he like kind of lets it go for a little while. And he's like, "Well, actually, that's me." And she's like, "Oh, really?"
Well, I mean, the reason she said all that is to build that guy up, build up that character for us, the audience.
I know, but it was just a little funny. And then like the whole time when I'm watching the movie, in regards to their relationship, I'm like, when is he gonna slap her and tell her to stop being hysterical? And it almost happened a couple times.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we're kind of like off the rails here. This is like way deep in the movie, but like when they're in that farmhouse, and like, dude, okay, so her uncle has been obliterated, her town's been obliterated, aliens are destroying and invading the whole world, and she's like, it's just been a whole day. He's like, just get it together. He's almost like, come on, like it's not. And they were just in a plane that crashed.
Yes.
Into a farmhouse. She just survived a plane crash, and she's like, just one hair out of place. And he's like, get it together, woman. It's just, and then a meteor like crashes into that farmhouse immediately.
Yes.
So that was kind of funny.
Yes. Her entire interaction was. It felt dated, it felt like a little bit one-sided.
It didn't feel as dated as I thought it was going to be.
Well, I know, but we've seen like better female like depictions in prior movies in this series. So in that way, I think it's like a step back. Whatever. All right, let's take a step back.
Yeah.
All right. So from the very
I just thought it was funny. That's all.
Yeah. So I read like 20 pages of the book, like 10% of it, and I listened to like a little bit of the broadcast. The 1938, I think, broadcast.
Oh gosh, there's a lot to talk about.
There's a lot to talk about here.
I guess we should say War of the Worlds. Like it's based on a book by H.G. Wells from 1897.
1898?
Well, what?
Sure.
Whatever, Doc.
They're different years.
Okay.
Spanish-American War? Come on.
Okay. 1897 or 8. This is like one of the most referred to, drawn from, reference pieces of science fiction like ever, probably. And like it's from 1897. That was crazy. Like when I saw that, did you know that? I was like, this is written in like the 1800s, like literally.
We watched a couple of movies that were based on H.G. Wells' work, all right? The Invisible Man and
The Island of Dr. Moreau. Is that him?
Yeah, I think so. And so, those movies felt like they were from a different age versus this one. But it's so strange because I did read a little bit of the book, and what's so beautiful, I think, about books and just reading them is the English language, at least the way he wrote this book, it's not difficult to understand. It doesn't feel like the writing, like the grammar is from a different world or a different time. It feels very contemporary. But the hilarious thing to me is, even though the words might be the same words we use, the ideas, like the social like feelings of the time, they come through. This is a sci-fi author, right? So this is someone who, I don't know, thinks about the world and, maybe has more of an open mind. And you can see even he is like affected by like the society, the times that he comes from. So there's a couple of quotes from the books that that I just wanted to go through real fast. So first of all, right, the way the book opens is the same way that this movie opens, and it's the same way that the 2005 movie opens as well. It's sort of this wonderful little monologue. All right, so H.G. Wells is describing the Martians as this like force that's looking at Earth with their lascivious. H.G. Wells is describing sort of the Martians from their point of view, looking with their greedy eyes across the solar system at a planet that might be able to sort of, sustain them, as I think their planet was cooling very quickly and wasn't going to be like inhabitable. And so he's describing them looking at Earth and how smart they are and what their intellect must be like compared to ours. And he's saying, man, can you imagine that though? Like you might be saying that they're sentient, like we're sentient. They can't come to us and like take over our world. That'd be wrong. And then H.G. Wells makes a comparison in his time to where I think the Europeans like took over and basically took over a lot of like Aboriginal Tasmanians. And this is the quote that he uses. The Tasmanians, in spite of their human likeness, were entirely swept out of existence in a war of extermination waged by European immigrants in the space of 50 years. Like he says that, just saying like, oh, but look at this fact of history. And he describes like these people as nearly human. It's
God.
just
Human equals British back then.
right. It's just this is 125 years ago, and that just like stuff like that always just throws me off. I'm like, whoa, that's kind of wild.
Yeah, it is like shocking, like how little you have to go back in time to like reach like, I mean, even now, right? But like,
Right.
Doctors in like 1950 were like, you're not smoking enough cigarettes, man. Like, you really got to amp that. It's like, it's not that long ago.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Sometimes it feels like rational thought has only been around for like 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
And even then it's like slipping. But anyway, yeah, this is what it feels like. So this is kind of like actually a beast of a topic because we're going to talk about the whole thing. And we didn't read the book, or
No, I only
we're
read
not going
those
to talk
20
about
pages.
the book really, but like the whole thing is like kind of a big topic.
And just to give like a little overview, right? So that's 1898. That's before World War I, World War II. Then you have the broadcast that I think everyone's sort of heard of.
1930.
I think it's 38.
38, yeah.
Where, Orson Welles in his like 20s or 30s basically has this hour-long presentation over the radio where he describes, these aliens coming down. Then you have this movie in 1953. And then what I've seen most recently is the 2005 movie. Then there's like a show and blah, blah, blah. There's so much. But so that's kind of where this 1953 movie fits in.
It's kind of interesting. And like it clearly resonates with people over like 100-year span, like it keeps coming up. Like 1897, 1938, 1953, 2005, 2097.
And I think you said this before, quoting something where it's like sci-fi is sort of a mirror held up to society.
Yeah.
And you can see that pretty well in the different adaptations of this because, you have the pre-World War II broadcast, you have the post-World War II, post-atom bomb, 1953 adaptation, you have the post-9/11 2005 adaptation, and they really do feel like they're products of those events. These movies and I guess everything, more than the others, seem like definite examples of those times rather than that specific story.
That is a very interesting lens to view this, very specific and interesting lens to view this through. Like this movie is very much colored by the Cold War, and then the 2005 is very much colored by like terrorist attacks, September 11th. It's like interesting. It's the same story, but like, so we were both shocked that the movie was like
good.
Like, so I would say the pacing is good. Cinematography feels very modern. It's almost like almost too fast. There's like do you remember where the cylinder crashes down? They're all out there looking at it, and then Sylvia invites Dr. Forrester to like a dance or something.
Yeah,
like the local town hall dance that night because he's gonna stay in town to investigate it in the next morning. Like mid-sentence it cuts to them like just dancing, it's like, hey, do you want to go to this and then like they're just dancing.
But that
immediately
that's what I meant about like this movie sort of combines not just the matter-of-factness of the earlier movies, but it adds some like kind of human characterization to these people. I appreciated that because it gave me a better sense of like the characters that we're dealing with.
Do you remember the sheriff when he shows up to tell the scientists that the thing crashed and he's just like a buffoon? He just starts eating their stuff and like he takes like the guy's cigarette.
Yes. I mean, okay, so to flesh this out a little bit more, even though I recommend you watch this movie, this object crashes, they see it and they think maybe, hey, there's some scientists down by the lake. Let's get them over here. And this was, by the way, one of the first things I thought of when I read H.G. Wells's book was, man, like, what centralized authority is there to respond to this? Like, that's the number one thing you need in a case like this is something to like coalesce this information and have like some kind of like managed response. Anyways, whatever. So these like scientists like just, oh hey, I got my plane, let's take my plane over. Like how much more capable people were in like 1953
seemingly
randos today.
Seemingly they had more authority to just do whatever based on this movie.
But super cool guy Clayton Forrester, who feels like an archetype for Jeff Goldblum's character in Jurassic Park, maybe.
Kind of.
Yeah. But yeah, he's like shows up to this asteroid or meteorite. I don't know which. I'm gonna get I'm gonna get eviscerated.
Comet? I don't know.
This extraterrestrial body crashing into the ground, and yeah, he's like talking about it, and then it goes to town.
So I was struck by the pacing, the cinematography, and the effects. Strangely, I was like, oh, this is pretty good. Like,
The effects are so good.
dude, the effects are very simple. It's like lighting, smoke, fire.
But the miniatures and the map paintings
Yeah,
are
yeah.
so good. Like, so they're in the very beginning when I'm saying like the Martians are envious and they're looking at other planets. So then there's a narrator saying all of this stuff, and on screen are like these beautiful like paintings of like the surfaces of Venus and Mars. And
Yeah,
they
that's
look
true.
so good. And there's like volcanoes. It looks like Mordor like in one. And there's like miniatures, and they're so convincing.
They look very good. And then like the effects, like the heat rays, and they had it at the very beginning. I don't know if you noticed. We should say that the War of the Worlds is famous for the Strider machines, the machines the Martians use to like fight with. And they're like 3-legged walking machines with heat rays. This one, they didn't have the legs, kind of. Did you notice they had like magnetic legs?
Yeah.
So when they first showed up, what it's supposed to be, because they tried to do the effect with actual legs, and you can imagine it's much harder because these like models suspended with like wire, right? Like it's much easier to have like a floating saucer. But in the film, like, or in the book, like they very much are walking on 3 legs. So what they did when they first showed up, they draw like little effects under them.
Yeah, it's like
They're like electromagnetic invisible legs.
yeah,
and
like electrical current.
yeah. And when they touch the ground, it actually catches on fire. But they stopped doing that because they're like, 1, this is way too hard. And then 2, lighting fire everywhere is like a big fire hazard, it turns out. So they decided, so they're like, yeah, whatever, just forget that part.
Oh,
so,
okay. I
So
didn't know
after the initial scene with I'm just going to call them striders because that's what they are, even though they're not striding. But those war machines, they don't do that anymore, which is fine. But it was cool.
That was cool, yeah. And their design is pretty nice. I mean, you can tell that they're kind of miniatures because I don't think they have enough detail on the hulls, but they're like little articulating.
Little telescopic head
Yeah.
thing. It's pretty cool.
Looks really cool. And then
Even now, like
the combination of like the orthogonal like neck with like the very smooth like curved head. It seems really futuristic.
And then, like, you know, when they shoot the tanks and stuff, they like just vaporize. It does that classic thing where it just kind of turns the whole shape of the object into like a red mass and just it disappears. Apparently, that's really hard to do, that effect.
I mean, you're masking without Photoshop. I mean, it seems
Yeah.
like you're probably cutting out like different film.
Did you read this? So let me make sure I don't mess this up. The sound that Okay, so they have 2 weapons for some reason. They have a heat ray, which is like a red thing, and they have the green laser, which comes out of the sides. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
Whatever. So the green laser, the sound effect is the same sound effect as the photon torpedoes from Star Trek. They just used it from this movie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and the sound is actually hitting a high tension steel wire with like a cape or the hammer.
Okay.
If you listen to it, you can
because
kinda
I've
tell.
heard that. Yeah, I know what that sounds like. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the lasers in Star Wars were also like hitting like a tensioned metal with like something. So that's like a thing.
Because I guess I've heard it when metal sort of like you bend it and it like pops back into place.
Yeah. But they used the same as they used a couple sound effects from this in Star Trek, the original series, actually.
Okay. And so this movie starts off, and I'll try to not make any comparisons with the 2005 version, but what's so cool is, right, they go and they see this thing in the ground. They very quickly surmise it's an alien object. Our boy Clayton's at the little barn dance, and then our 3 random townspeople get incinerated by these heat rays.
Yeah.
Clayton comes back. They immediately are able to like call the army and get everything kind of cordoned off. In your mind, you're always like playing these games of, well, if I was there, I would have done this, and this. Well, they did it. They did all of that. They got the army, they got the Air Force, they got, mortars, tanks, machine guns, like rocket launchers, everything, set on these Striders. And Sylvia's uncle, the pastor, goes.
Okay, so we can talk about this. There's like a weird kind of religious theme.
There is.
And I wasn't sure which way it was going to go, actually, because they make it seem like foolish at the beginning. Sylvia's uncle is the town pastor. And it's so funny because the Striders are like, they like already vaporized some people. It's kind of clear that this is an adversarial relationship. But he is like the sacrificial pacifist. Because his function in the movie is to show that peace was never an option. He's like, no one's even tried to talk to these aliens or reason with them. We can show them we come in peace. And everyone's like, no, bro, don't.
Yeah, and then he like walks like, quoting
Julio.
straight
walks out
towards
there.
them. Yeah.
And she's like, oh, God, you fool. You're about to be vaporized. And he is. So it kind of makes it seem like, that was a silly thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I saw that coming. As soon as he starts talking, you're like, oh, no, this guy's going to just kill himself. It kind of like is nice because story-wise, it's like peace is now off the table.
Yeah, it closes that door.
It's like this is now just a war problem.
Yeah, there's no Monday morning quarterback. Well, actually, I would have made sure that we could have
Yeah.
And
so
it's great.
then that's just like, okay, that's done now.
Right. So that's not an option. They tried attacking them. That's not an option. And now
They have like an energy shield, which, if you look, it's just like one of those glass jars they use to cover stuff in like a science laboratory, right? That's what it looks like. I don't know. It looks cool.
Yeah,
I think I found it effective as well. Yeah, but none of that stuff works. None of the bombs, none of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone gets like vaporized. It's actually kind of like, it's kind of scary, which is shocking, right? Like this old movie.
And that's, that sense of like doom.
Completely powerless.
Within 15 minutes, this movie...
It's like people like on fire and stuff.
I know,
Like, oh,
and
God.
that's what made it so good is like you had the special effects with the tank, but then you just had like practical effects as well, and those things mixed together. But just in 15 minutes, this movie from 1953 was able to make me feel a sense of helplessness that Three Body Problem was not able to do.
Oh, God.
I'm never going to stop. I'm just never going to stop. So anyways, then they escape on his plane. They crash.
The Dr. Forrester and Sylvia escape. They get on his private plane. A small aside, like when the Martians like activate their lasers, it seems like it knocks out all technology or something. Like, remember all the watches stop working, the phones stop working, electricity stops working.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes any sense. He says like, oh, it's magnetized. And I'm like, that's why the watch doesn't work because it's magnetized. Does that make any sense? Can that happen?
I don't know.
Science?
I don't know how magnets work.
I mean, you can magnetize stuff, I guess, but it has to be a ferro, like iron and stuff, right? Like, how do magnets work? I don't know. It's been a long time.
Anyway,
this is very stupid, but he's like, the power's not working. Call the electric company. I'm like, you dumbass. The phone works on electricity. And then he's like, oh, the phone's on a different circuit. I was like, oh, I was the dumbass.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And what's also funny is like, in order to kind of explain what's happening, Clayton's like, hey, you got a compass on your right? Of course I do. Of course I got a compass. Here's my pocket compass.
Funny.
What's funny is like, how useless would all of us be without our cell phones? Not only do we have everything on there, like the compass and stuff, ruler, but also we have no skills.
Yeah.
Like we can't do any of those things.
Yeah, we would just welcome death.
7 + 6? What? Yeah.
What do you want from me, man? What do you want? So, yeah, Forrester, Clayton, and Sylvia, they crash and they kind of wander into like this farmhouse. They're still at like everyone else is like evacuating. This is like around Los Angeles. Everyone's evacuating. They're in this little farmhouse kind of hiding out. And then they see like a close-up of like another impact comes and a Strider comes out. And they're kind of like watching it. And then I guess, I don't know what it is, a little creeper snake camera thing like comes into their house. They're hiding and looking for them.
Yeah, like a fiber optic camera comes out of the Strider and just kind of like looks around for them.
Yeah, like one of the aliens is like outside of the machine and they like see it. It looks weird and creepy.
This was such a good reveal. Man, this movie, it's so good about this stuff. It must have been one of the first to do this. Well, it's the first thing to do this effectively in the movies that we've watched, where you see Sylvia looking to the left of the screen and then you know what's about to happen, but it's still scary, where a hand of the alien comes and like touches her left shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
It was so effective and it was still horrifying, even though, I mean, you've seen it 1,000 times by this point.
I will say the alien looked like goofy.
Yeah.
Like it looked real goofy.
I did not like the three
RGB
RGB eyes.
And the same thing with their little like snake camera.
Yeah.
It had the 3 eyes too. Do you remember there was a part where like it was like closing or like partially closed? You'll have to cut to this.
Oh, it looks like a sad little robot.
Looks like a little ooh-woo, like, oh.
Aww.
That's what it looked like. That's very funny. But
yeah,
the little alien guy like shows up and does he hit it with like a hammer or something?
He throws, I think, like a pipe at it and then you don't see it, but you like hear it get hit and then
Welcome
it runs
to
away.
Compton.
Yeah. But,
it just kind of runs away. It doesn't make any sense. I'm like, why did they not just kill them? But
yeah, but when it first comes in, like you see only the shadow, like it's so effectively
it's pretty effective,
shown.
yeah.
And
then you got to show the alien at least once.
And they only show it once at the very end of the movie.
They show
Spoilers: the alien dies. I'm surprised they showed the restraint they did by only showing the hand.
I think they knew it didn't look good or something.
I suppose so.
But anyway, like I mean, that's how they're able to get. Like he hits it, they get a sample of its blood, and then they get like part of the camera. They get like a piece of it, so he's got a little bit of stuff to take back with him to study. So like in the meantime, the army decides to nuke this thing, which I was like waiting for that to happen because I'm like, why don't they just nuke him?
Right.
Because it's 1953. Did you get this impression? This is very reminiscent. The whole thing, but this part especially is like very reminiscent of Independence Day.
It's been a long time since I've seen Independence
Dude, the whole thing is like aliens show up, they blow up all the monuments. The army can't do anything to stop them. They have like these shields, and then the president's like, we gotta nuke them. And then like you can like put them like side by side, maybe you can. It's like almost the same, like feels like shot for shot, not shot for shot, but it feels like a very very much the same kind of mood. I think the other thing too, but I don't know. I mean, it's just interesting. So the nuke does nothing. You're like, well, now what do we got? A couple things. So nuclear bombs are pretty new. They're like 7 years old. 1945 at this point. 8 years old. And the Soviets got the bomb in 1949. So that's like kind of a new radical new technology for everybody everyone's dealing with. They show the flying wing, which is pretty cool, but the plane that dropped it.
Yes.
I'm like, they're kind of like showing off like advanced, you know how like in Transformers they show off like the army and stuff? It's like kind of the same thing. They're showing off like all the high-tech stuff of the day. So they show the flying wing, which was cool.
I mean, super cool. And apparently it was because I think that same company had shot footage of the flying wing, like taking off and landing. And so they just used it in this film. But I will say, so, I mean, the movies we've watched that take place after 45 is It Came from Outer Space.
The Day the Earth Stood Still?
The Thing from Another World?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. And all of these feature like, I think aviation was a much bigger deal to those people than we realize.
Well, it was very new.
And then the technologies of World War II play a huge role in all of these movies because they are like science fiction. I mean, it's so amazing. Like the planes especially feature so heavily in these movies.
Apparently that flying wing like never took off. I mean, it did, obviously, you see it flying, but like it was like a prototype they canceled, but it was Northrop Grumman. It's the same people that made the B-2 flying wing much later. They kind of like I was reading about it. They said they used some of the same like information from this model to like inform that. They noticed at the time, they're like, this thing doesn't have a very big radar cross section. Oh well, I mean, you know, it wasn't as important then, I guess. And also, it was like,
I feel like it wouldn't be stable, like going.
Well, you're very right, because the thing is, it's a very aerodynamic shape because it has no drag, because it doesn't have anything sticking out of it, right? But also you have less control surfaces, and the fins on an airplane are like stabilizing. The thing is, flying wings, you see them in the 90s, finally, because they are inherently unstable.
And you like vectoring.
It's the computer stabilization that enables them to fly. So like when you're flying it now, the computer flight controller is like constantly like making micro adjustments to like keep everything stable. And in 1953, you're like, just doing it all by hand. So.
Yeah. And then there was one other thing, I guess, we're mentioning technology. You know, in the beginning, they show Earth in the like map painting section of like, you know, different planets in the solar system. And so they show Earth from like space as, you know, we take this for granted, but it's like a globe. And they just show it like that. And I was like, wait, did they like I know they knew that the Earth was round. I know.
Whoa. What are you saying right now?
Okay.
If you cut back to, you can clearly see the ice wall. That's all I'm saying.
Anyway, so the Earth is round, and I was like, wait, when did they get a picture of the Earth? Because you're saying like, you know, the Sputnik didn't go up till 57, and so they sent up V2 rockets starting in like 1946, and that's how they sort of got these images of the Earth.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like, but you see the curvature, but they're not in color. Well, they might be in color, but I don't think they really had like a full shot of Earth like they did here. So the fact that like what you're seeing on screen right now, this is their rendering of what they thought Earth looked like. They'd never seen it before.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So that was really...
It's weird to think about.
Yeah, 1946. I mean, it was when they even started doing that.
Yeah. I mean, like you were saying about the airplane. I mean, like the jet engine was like just like came into prominence in like 1945.
And I think
commercial flights. I don't know when that started being a thing, but it can't have been. It's got to be in this time period too.
Pan Am. But I think that goes to show you how big of a deal the aerospace industry is.
Yeah.
To modernizing the world, because that is the one thing that makes these movies feel much closer to today than like a movie from 1910. I think it just equalizes a lot of the technological advancements.
Yeah.
All right. But
I feel like the Air Force is also like, especially at the time, is like the deliverer of the atomic bomb, you know? Like they didn't have ICBMs then, like missiles and stuff. It was yeah.
Anyways, where were we?
Well, they dropped the atomic bomb and didn't do anything.
Right.
Yeah.
And so then, our scientists are looking and trying to discover more about the Martians.
Oh, that was interesting. So what do you want to talk about first? Their blood or their TikTok vision?
All right, the TikTok vision. Let's just get that over with.
I didn't really understand that. Did you? I mean, it was like they don't see the way we do. They have their goofy ass RGB 3 lens thing.
Like the color green is a little bit more apparent. Maybe take away the reds.
Let's see how they see, and it just looks like everything's kind of just like prism light separated into like red, green.
Well, no. I think that was just an effect before the thing got calibrated.
Oh, well, what was it supposed to show?
I think there's just no red in there because maybe they grew up on Mars, so their vision just accounted for that somehow.
Okay.
I don't get it.
Can they like use that to their advantage? They just dress in red.
Well, they said, "Oh, this is why they were so interested in you, Sylvia."
Why?
But I didn't get that either because you look the same as all the others.
Yeah, I was like,
maybe we need like a CRT television to figure it out.
I don't know.
I'm not sure.
And then the blood, the Martian blood, that was very
anemic
funny.
Martian blood.
They're like, this is the weakest ass blood I've ever seen. Right? Like the heart of a bitch right here. Like that was funny. I think this is more of like an 1890s conception. Like they didn't have heart. They had brain, but they didn't have heart.
Maybe. This movie does this well where it's not like The Thing from Another World where you just have 5 minutes of a scientist man like pontificating on
it does
what these plants are.
Do it very well, yeah.
Yeah, it's like hidden, it's like slipped in very well where Clayton just like says things like, oh, well, it's probably like an electromagnetic force field. All right, move on to, and then it's just kind of like slipped in there. It's not like forced. You don't feel like you're listening to a monologue.
He doesn't give you like a lecture for like in the middle of the movie that doesn't make any sense and then just moves on, It's like very much in there, kind of mixed in the whole time, which is nice.
Yeah, then from the Pacific Institute of Science and Technology, pissed, they evacuated.
By the way, did you read this? I forgot who made this movie, Universal? I don't know. They made a lot of movies in this era, and they used a lot of scientists in their movies. And for all of them, they just said they were all from this place.
Yes, I read that. Because, it's better than, it's easier.
It's better than saying like Berkeley or something.
Yeah. And so, they finally, once they realized that, oh, no, these nukes didn't affect the Titans, they're still coming for us, then they decided to evacuate. And then I was thinking this whole time, with the exception of Sylvia, who they have, characterized as, just screaming a lot.
Shell-shocked.
Yeah. Everybody's acting like pretty rational. I'm like, that doesn't seem very realistic.
I was waiting for that too. I was waiting for that the whole time because I was like, I remember the 2005 one, which we'll talk about, but I remember like most of the movie feeling like this human mass panic, hysteria, like they're really fighting with other people most of the time kind of thing. And I was like, are they not going to do that in this? But no, dude, it gets pretty dark.
Did.
It's like very bleak.
They did. And so they leave pissed and they on their trucks. And all these other people are, kind of like crowding the streets of LA, I guess, which, by the way, the streets of LA, you see the train tracks, like the trolley tracks, streetcar. Not anymore.
No.
Anyway, so then, he has a truck, which everybody wants to leave the city. And so they like mob him and then, like throw him out.
He's got all of his scientific instruments and samples. And like, they're like, okay, we have something of the aliens. Let's try to study it and figure out they have a weakness, because they have to have a weakness because they're real beings. They have to have a real weakness, right? They're made of stuff. They're not like angels or demons or something, And I'm like, okay, because I didn't remember how this ended. I was like, how are they going to get out of this? I couldn't remember. And so I'm like, okay, well, I guess they're going to study this blood and come up with a thing. But no, like immediately all their stuff gets stolen, their trucks get hijacked, and he's just like wandering the city.
Yeah, and this is where the movie kind of slowed down for me a little bit. He's just like searching for Sylvia, who's, had a story about her waiting at a church when she was younger. She's like, oh, she must be at a church, kind of just like stumbling around churches looking for her. And so the movie kind of slowed down there because really there's no straightforward action like performed by the protagonist.
It's like there's nothing to do. It's kind
Yeah.
of bleak, you know? It's like there's nothing he can do at all. He's just
Yeah.
going to die. Everyone's going to die. There's nothing we can do. We tried everything.
And he just looks for her, and eventually he finds her. But yeah, it slowed down a little bit. But he finds her, and then at the very, very end, you kind of see one of the Striders sort of like fall down onto a building. And by the way, like the effects at the very end, I think kind of tapered off just a little bit because it was easier to tell that they were miniatures, kind of like the way that they fell.
Oh, yeah. We'll do
Whatever.
When it's floating, easy. But like when a big thing falls, it's hard to make a small thing look like a big thing.
Yeah,
falling.
I mean, you just gotta I think add a little bit more bass to the fall.
Look, I'll call Universal and let them know.
Okay, well,
Look, slow it down.
my time machine phone.
You get one call. Okay. Mr. Roosevelt?
German High Command, 1936. Can you patch me to Universal?
The hell were we saying?
And so then, at the very end, the aliens just kind of die because of bacteria.
They just fall over and die. Like their machines just fall down, and they're just dead.
It's implied that this was sort of like an act of God. It was like a miracle.
They're praying in a church, begging for a miracle, and like literally a miracle happens. And at the very end, it explains that it was bacteria, but then it also says like
who God and his like wisdom put on this earth.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that kind of like those religious overtones he added, I guess the studio added to this movie. I don't think they were really present. I think honestly, I think the H.G. Wells novel was
novel was anti-religious.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah,
and this was, I thought it was anti-religious because the priest was like, no, this is the way to go, and he gets vaporized. I'm like, okay,
right.
But then at the very end, it's very strongly implied that Jesus helped.
If I had to guess, it maybe is hey, nuclear weapons exist. And, there's really nothing you can maybe do about it. So just don't worry. And
I wonder, do you think it was just studio interference? This was the 50s in America.
Yeah.
Do you think they said, hey, don't crap on religion?
Almost definitely.
I know for sure. I don't know if you read that too, but they had noted that like they forced them to put in the romantic subplot.
Yeah, it was supposed to be Clayton Forrester with his mother, I think, just trying to escape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fine. But there was studio involvement, as there always is. So that might have been why. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, so it doesn't really make the movie worse, but it doesn't make it better. I mean, it makes it more interesting. It's more complex. And it gives you like a little insight into the times. But as the movie, I mean, it doesn't really change anything, I think.
I don't really care. I'm one or the other.
So overall, again, good movie. Mm-hmm. The color really jumped out. Yeah. I like the special effects. It was easy to watch. Maybe the last third was a little bit slow, but still just a good movie.
Yeah, that was pretty compelling, like legitimately. Do you want to talk about the ending? Like, the ending is very controversial because it's like it's a Deus Ex Machina. You've heard that term, right? Like,
it's just explain it.
Well, Deus Ex Machina is like it means God from the machine, is a literal term in Latin, and what it means is like something comes out of nowhere at the very end to like save the day, but it's not set up or alluded to in any way. So it's like, oh, they just all died because bacteria killed them. Like, oh, well, that's convenient. It just comes out of nowhere, solves the problem. It's like, how are they going to get out of this? Are they going to get out of it? Oh, the term comes from, you know where the term comes from? It's kind of weird. So in ancient Greek plays, like Aeschylus, I think was one of the guys attributed to developing this idea or whatever, but they would have at the very end of Greek plays, like Greek tragedies, they would have the gods get involved and like just solve the problem. And the gods would be like actors lowered down on a crane, like a machine.
Whoa.
So that's what
like in Greece? That's pretty cool.
That's what it said, yeah. So that's where the term comes from.
It's pretty neat.
And they would just like, oh, I'm screwed forever. Oh, here's Apollo. Yoink, and, saves you.
It's kind of a way to have your cake and eat it too.
It is.
And worship the cake.
Because it makes it very tense. Like, this is a crazy, insane situation. How are they going to get out of it? A satisfying writing is like, oh, they get out of it in a cool way that you didn't see coming. But in retrospect, you can see that it was set up.
Yeah.
Like, surprising, they figured it out. My protagonist used his skills to solve this problem. But in Deus Ex Machina like this, it's just like, oh, it just happens to solve it. It's like, oh, there's monsters. He got struck by lightning and he just died. Like, oh, cool.
Yeah. In documentaries, I suppose it works because it's real and actually happened.
Well,
but...
yeah. If it's really,
I know. It comes out of nowhere.
That's the thing. It's just
makes it interesting. In this one, they sort of set it up with the anemic blood.
A little bit.
So it's not completely out of nowhere.
Did it bother you? It didn't really bother me.
Because I think it's the limitations of the science of the time. And it really, like if you really think about it, it's like, oh, these super duper amazing aliens didn't know about germs. Like, how did they even like evolve on Mars?
Do you want to talk about how it doesn't make any sense?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay. Because it doesn't make any sense. I mean, does it? You, a man of science, me, a man of science, doesn't really make any sense.
No,
right?
I mean, how are you going to evolve on Mars, like to be that without any like lower life forms?
Here's what I read when reading about I don't remember where this comes from exactly, but I think it was theorized, I don't know, by Wells himself or someone else reading the stuff, that it was supposed to be that their Martian society had advanced to such a degree that they had like wiped out germ disease like 1,000 years ago. So they kind of forgot that it was a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe, but no, like you can't.
No.
Do that. You can't do that. You're made of cells, and we know about the microbiome and all that stuff. Then probably not, right?
Right.
Also, would in the same way that like human viruses don't affect oysters.
I'm willing to buy. I'm willing to buy that they're close enough to us somehow that
it's more
works.
likely that a bacteria could affect it than a virus, I would surmise, because viruses usually they're like targeted towards like the surface proteins and stuff like that. Bacteria, it's like
there's millions of bacteria. One of them probably has some weird mutation that like I don't know.
Maybe possible.
Yeah.
The thought that they would just get out and not wear spacesuits is like kind of stupid.
I think one like thought experiment that you can have with this movie is what if we from the year 2024 had to go back to 1953, so 71 years back, right? If we had all the power, all the money in this world, and we could take whatever we wanted to Earth, could we like subdue 1953 society?
Probably not, because how many of us do we get to take back?
Right, but like using like drones, like with how poor their radar is.
It depends. Can they nuke us or not? Because if they can nuke us, that's it.
We can take our anti-aircraft artillery there. Like imagine, okay, if we could take
help. Okay, just take nukes off the table. If you take that off the table, then absolutely yes.
No, let's not even take it off the table. Let's put in like 50 aircraft carriers. Like 1,000 planes
of ours today
of 2024.
Okay,
and like 10,000 like soldiers.
Yeah,
like with the airplanes, like they're not gonna allow any. Like they don't have the technology to like send. We can shoot down anything they send at us. Nothing will reach us.
Depends if they have ICBMs or not. I don't remember if they would or not. That's one thing that you can't. Even they have so many that like you can't reliably shoot them all down.
I suppose.
This is really getting in the weeds. Right, it doesn't matter. Yes, for sure.
But
for
I'm just
sure,
saying,
yes.
like, yeah, you go back and like with like drones and all these like technologies that we have today, we can make it seem like magic to them. That's only 71 years ago.
Yeah.
Like with certain technologies that we have, it would completely disrupt everything.
Yeah.
It's just interesting to look at it in that way. Like their version of aliens is a mirror to their society because they didn't know about, germs and all of this stuff. Whereas we look at that and we're like, well, of course, like if we're going to a different planet, we're not going to take off our masks. We're going to like do soil samples and stuff first.
Yeah, he wrote it in 1897. So
right,
it's pretty nuts. Also, like the thought that aliens would be alive on Mars, that doesn't make any sense either. But they didn't have, 1897, so it's fine. Yeah. So did you read about in the book at all the Martians are supposed to be like little, basically just brains with like tentacles?
Yeah, I am.
Like they can't stand on Earth because the gravity's higher, and like they're just portrayed to be like physically super weak and dependent on their machines.
What's the Pokemon? The one with the tentacle or something?
Tentacruel?
Tentacool, I think.
Oh,
the first
Tentacruel is the evolution.
Yeah. So Tentacool. Yeah, it was just like supposed to be like wires, I think, sticking
something
out.
Like that, yeah. So they cut out the fact that they were like harvesting our blood. Do you remember that?
I thought when Sylvia was like screaming when he saw the blood.
Yeah.
I thought she was screaming because she thought that the blood was like the oil of the machine.
Yeah.
And that they were using blood to.
It's very Marxist. The machines of capitalism are oiled by the blood of the workers. Anyway,
the machines of Mars are oiled by the blood of
humans. Yeah. So they took all that out. So the fact that like they were coming to Earth because they exhausted their resources on Mars, because they didn't have digestive systems, they didn't eat. They only survived by transfusing blood into them, which also makes no sense. You can't just like transfuse like a different like cow blood into you. Like, yes, now I'll live forever.
Wow. Yeah, sure.
Especially
you can super filter it or something, but then why don't you synthesize it if you know all that? Like
the thought that No, I mean, no. I mean, the fact that you didn't have like,
all right.
no, that doesn't work. Also, that can't be their model for like their whole civilization, just like draining blood from other stuff. Like, how would they, you know what I mean?
I mean, blood-sucking mosquitoes exist.
Yeah, but they only use that to feed their young.
Really?
Yeah, only female mosquitoes do that. Do you know that?
Oh.
Only female mosquitoes are the ones that bite you, and they only use it to feed their larvae or something.
Wow.
Yeah. The more you know.
Interesting. Yeah.
I think the dudes are just at home getting drunk.
Drunk on blood?
No.
Drunk on power?
I think the fact that, okay, so a big thing about this is one of the big themes in the novel is like you were saying with the Tasmanians. It's like an exploration of colonialism and like a really advanced civilization coming down, just wiping you out, using you and exploiting you. Like in this novel, the aliens are like literally just, they're there to take our blood and live on it, you know, like eat us basically.
Mm-hmm.
You could see very clearly in that situation the parallels with like colonialism, right? You see that coming through.
Yeah.
They're coming to like exploit the native population. They're using their crazy advanced technology to like just do whatever they want, right?
There's really nothing you can do to stop them.
But I feel like that colonialism angle is very much lost in this movie because that stuff is gone, you know?
There were still colonies back then, like in the 50s. I think it was the ending.
No.
It.
I mean that the aspect of them coming to like eat humans is like gone. You don't really know why they're just kind of they're shooting at stuff, but like that whole aspect of the novel is kind of lost.
Yeah, I wonder. I suppose that was just too much for audiences.
Maybe, might have been. Do you want to talk about the radio thing real quick? Orson Welles, not to be confused with H.G. Wells, put on a radio show of War of the Worlds as like a mock. Not documentary, but like mock newscast of like this is actually happening
with
like,
no ads, so it was all kind of like within that 1 hour.
Like they're just like talking to reporters online at the scene, like, oh my gosh, now it's coming out. Oh, it's vaporizing the Eiffel Tower, you know, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And people would tune in. They said at the very beginning of the show, like, this is all fake, obviously, you dummies, but people would tune in at random times and then just be listening and be like, what? Say, what's going on? Oh my God. So the reputation of this event is that like a lot of people went crazy. There was like mass hysteria. People thought aliens were invading for real. People killed themselves out of like terror and stuff. Mm-hmm. And then I was reading about it and it turns out that like a lot of this is like overhyped. It was basically like maybe some people did.
It like helped marketing basically.
It was like very few people heard the program because it wasn't very popular. Very few people complained about it, and very few. Most of the people that had a problem thought it was talking about like maybe Germans, not aliens.
Okay.
Because they were just like, this was like 1938. You know what I mean? Yeah. So they were worried about that kind of stuff. But basically, it was like overblown by this little thing happened, and then the media of the time blew it out of proportion just to generate sales. You know?
Yeah, that makes more sense. Cause
also, newsprint blew it out of proportion to crap on radio because radio was like kind of a newer thing.
Yeah,
and like they're taking our viewers. We got to like show the people how irresponsible they are. So the newspapers use it as an excuse to like crap on radio. Very funny.
Radio killed the news star.
I have a quote for you.
Goes.
You might want to leave this in or not. I don't know. So this is a quote from the Chicago Tribune commenting on that any intelligent listener should have realized the broadcast was fictional. Quote, "It would be more tactful to say that some of the members of the radio audience are a trifle and that many a program is prepared for their consumption."
Well, I listened to it. I listened to like 10, 20 minutes, and it's very apparent that this is fake news. Basically, it's like we're listening now to this jazz band in New York City. Do 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 do. We interrupt to bring you this crazy news bulletin. 3 objects have been spotted in the sky. Well, back to the music. Do 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 do. We're back, and we have a scientist here who describes like it happens so rapidly, like the progression of the story. Like, there's no way. It's like,
I mean, there's a way.
There's a way, man. But you would. But it would be
like,
silly to think it's real, I think.
Basically, the modern research into this event says that it was blown out of proportion.
Yeah.
Like, not that they didn't really bother that many people.
That seems easy to believe.
Yes,
I believe that very much so.
Yeah.
All right. And so let's talk very briefly about the 2005, I guess, adaptation.
So you just watched this.
I just watched. So I watched this one before I watched the 53 version.
Oh, okay.
Maybe I should have done it the other way around. maybe not.
I watched it in 2005, 20 years ago when it came out in theaters, and that's the last time I saw it. Yeah, I know. I want to die. I'm fucking old. But anyway, just coming out. But
Yeah.
I watched it 20 years ago when I was 37 in theaters. And also, I don't know if you remember this. Remember when we went to Universal Studios, the backlot tour?
Yeah, we saw the plane.
We saw the crash
from the 2005 movie.
set or whatever, yeah.
It was very interesting. Yeah.
I was like, I remember that.
There's basically, because I don't want to make this whole review about the 2005 movie.
No.
There's like 3 things about that. Dakota Fanning is a better actor at age 11 than most actors.
Oh, okay.
Just straight up. Like, she's incredible. Number 2, the sense of dread I felt in that movie, like it felt so helpless. They were so good at creating a sense of like, there's no way we're going to win in that movie. Like in the 1953 version, there's some like levity, and maybe our main character, Clayton Baxter, I guess, is a little bit too casual and cool. And it kind of takes away a little bit from the, impending doom. But in the 05 version, there's none of that. And you understand how completely screwed humanity is. Yeah. Completely screwed.
That was my impression from 20 years ago. I remember that.
Yeah. And that, look, I'm going to say this again because I just want to say it. Not like anybody's going to hear this. That feeling needs to be put into season 2 and 3 of the 3 Body Problem. Like that feeling, like they captured it so well. In 45 minutes of that movie, I was like completely just like, just completely beaten down.
I don't know. I looked at like some clips from the movie and like the trailer to like refresh my memory. It's been 20 years. But yeah, I remember like basically the bleak futility of like trying to resist. They get to that point within like 20 minutes in that movie. In the 1953 movie, it's like that feeling that you have for like the last 20 minutes is like the whole movie in like 2005 version.
Yeah.
It's like the whole movie is just like how we're just like kind of scrabbling to survive. We're fighting with other people. There's like a part, I think, right, where they're like the son wants to join the resistance or something.
Yeah.
It's like, we got to do something.
You can see exactly how this mirrors sort of like society of the time, like after 9/11, where he's like, we got to fight back. We got to go. We got to hit them back.
Yeah. And then if I recall, like Tom Cruise doesn't let him.
Yeah, he doesn't let him then.
And he's really pissed. But then like you see them and like they're all just getting completely obliterated, right? Like,
yeah. Well, eventually, like later in the movie, the army's kind of firing off at these aliens. This movie does a lot. I'm not going to talk about the movie the entire time. But the special effects, like it's a really well shot movie because you don't always see the aliens, like I guess the Striders of that time. But you see like the army firing at something in the distance. You don't see it, but you just know it's not going well. And then, it's so stupid though. His name's Robbie, Tom Cruise's kid in this movie. He's like, I have to see it. And then eventually Tom Cruise is like, okay. And, goes and runs away. And immediately, like, that hill that Robbie was on is obliterated.
Right, yeah.
But Deus Ex Machina, Robbie's alive at the end. Whoop-de-doo.
Oh, he was there?
Yeah, he's alive at the end.
No, he was on that hill?
Yeah, that got, like, blowed up.
Oh, I thought he was, like, watching.
Oh, maybe he was. But, like, that area, it looks like he died.
It got blown up?
Yeah.
What I'm thinking of is, like, there's, like, 3 Striders on a hill, and they're, like, vaporizing everyone that's just, like, running up.
No, that was before what I'm talking about.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, the whole thing is, like, incredibly dark. Because they also very much do explore the, like, people are just rendered into like goo.
Yes, and so that's the other thing is, well, okay, Tom Cruise basically tells Dakota Fanning's character, hey, do this and don't listen while I go and like literally just murder Tim Robbins in this like room.
Yeah. Why does he do that again?
Because Tim Robbins was like being loud and he was going to draw attention to them. Yeah.
Why was he being loud?
Because he was like,
why didn't you just tell him to shut up?
He was just freaking out. But yeah, the one big thing that stood out in the 2005 version to make the bleakness even darker is like the blood spray.
Yeah.
That's, like I saw that and
Are they using their blood to like water their
it was like fertilizer.
Crops or something? Yeah.
Wild, man.
Dude, insane.
And so that movie is good. I never watched it because I always thought it was like, stupid. But it was just I don't know. The tone that imparts is just good. Incidentally, 2008, there was like Keanu Reeves version of The Day the Earth Stood Still.
Oh, yeah.
So it's just funny. It's around the same time.
That movie does not seem like we need to see it again.
I've never seen it, and I probably never will.
Yeah. But I mean, like, based on our viewing of the original, I'm like,
yeah, you know what it's going to be.
Yeah, but it's
like an early 2000s version of like pacifism. Like it's going to, with Keanu
Reeves.
Yeah.
Latu, Barata, Niktu.
Yeah.
Anyway. Small aside,
Hmm.
I remember maybe the dumbest thing about the new movie was that like they like get sent in by lightning into the machines that are buried underground.
Well, okay, so the implication,
Like they
I
buried
guess,
them like a bajillion years ago.
the implication of all of this is that Earth is just like a harvesting ground.
Yeah.
And now that there's like enough people, they like sent in like the drivers of the machines.
Yeah.
And now it's time to harvest.
Yeah.
But it's because Steven Spielberg specifically did not want aliens crash landing to Earth. Like he did not want like spaceships crash landing on
Why?
Earth. Overdone. That was like after.
He's remaking a movie from 1953. It's like, it's overdone. It's like you're remaking a movie, bro. Like you're overdoing it. You're the reason it's overdone.
I know, but he put his own spin on it.
Whatever. I mean, it was kind of dumb. It doesn't make a lot of sense. They buried these 1,000 years ago, and like they're gonna shoot their guys in with lightning and then harvest. It's like, did they just have like a crop rotation like every 10,000 years, like every planet?
That's horrifying, right?
Could you imagine if they dropped you into like, they're like, all right, bro, go harvest. And you're like, but this is the year 2024. And you just get lightning into like an ancient chariot. And you're like, go. And you're like, okay.
Well,
It's 1,000 years,
I
dude.
made this
it's like,
a little bit meta over here. But eventually, like, you would expect maybe society kind of like plateaus off.
It's 1,000 years.
I know.
Old technology.
But
surely they would have something better.
Okay, this is a question, I suppose. How many, let's say we exist in 10,000 years, do you think technology continues to evolve at some crazy pace? Like every 1,000 years?
Not all technologies, but in an overall sense, probably, yeah.
But like imagine we like stay on this path for 10,000 years of technological progress.
Okay.
Year like 10,000 to 11,000 is not going to have like as crazy a change as year 1,000 to 2,000.
No, but at the same time,
like it's the difference between like a Nimbus 2000 and a Firebolt.
You're saying that like a 1,000-year-old fighter plane, it's going to be the same?
I think it's like the difference between like
to your point,
an F-18 and an F-22, not the difference between like
a biplane,
a bike and an F-18.
To your point, I suppose a guy with a sword in like the year 0 could go back to the year -500 BC and he'd have a sword, right?
Yeah.
In that sense, sure. But in another more accurate sense, no.
All right, but mine's more precise. My sense is precise. Fine.
Oh, whatever. It's a very, who cares? It's a very small nitpick. But, you think like after 1,000 years, they wouldn't even remember they buried them there. They wouldn't even care anymore. The previous administrations did that.
I know, but like maybe
they're pivoting towards
maybe
Neptune.
they live for 2,000 years at a time.
It just seems very convoluted. It just seems much easier if you're that advanced to just fly in, kill everybody, and harvest away.
Yes, I do agree with that point, yes.
Not like bury secret machines, lightning people into them.
I agree with that point, yes.
And then basically just do the same thing as flying in anyway.
Yeah.
Whatever, it doesn't matter. I just remember that part was like different and weird. That's all.
Yeah. Oh, actually, one more thing than the 2005 version. They should definitely know about bacteria.
Oh.
So that's even more inexcusable.
Why should they definitely know about bacteria?
Like I said, like in 1950, well,
But it's still based on a book from 19.
I know, but it's less forgivable in a 2005 movie.
For the aliens to not know about bacteria?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Whatever.
I don't know. It's like, well, then how are they going to be defeated?
I know. I know. That's what I'm saying is like, that's even more bleak now. Like I saw that and I was like, oh, this makes even less sense in the year 2005.
Here's the other thing too. It's like, did all of the Martians come? Are there not more back at Mars? They could just be like, oh, we gotta wear suits, bros, and just come in and finish the job. Like, I think in the book it says that they're shot out of a gun from Mars, like an intergalactic gat, like just like shoots them at us. The space gun is like a very prevalent thing in like 1890, seemingly. Like
it's like we've said before. You just take
rockets.
You just take the technology of the time and you multiply it by 1,000. It's like what's a big thing now? AI.
It's like you see those like Victorian visions of the future, and it's just like a steampunk dirigible or something. it's like,
it's still the future.
It's hard. It's just like the gears will be even more complicated.
Yeah.
200 teeth per row.
Yeah, and I think
steam will fly, like steam powered elevators will take us to the moon.
Yes, and then one thing H.G. Wells says in his book, like the newspaper stories and stuff of the times prepared men's minds for the coming of Martians.
That's why they weren't shocked.
Yes,
by the Martians' appearance.
And in the 2005 version, the characters talk about EMP, like the characters in the show or in the film are like talking about it.
Oh, okay.
It's funny how like the audience at large is introduced to these concepts through sci-fi. It's just funny how these concepts are sort of introduced into the public consciousness. Ocean's 11 had one.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it's just sort of funny.
You know, when you say about these science fiction concepts and like, you know, it's easy to say like, oh, the computer in the future, it'll be 10 times as fast, or like the car will be twice as fast in the future, or it'll fly. But it's like hard to think of like, no, there won't be cars. There'll be this other thing that we don't have now. Or like there won't be computers. There'll be this other thing that we don't even have a conception of, you know?
Yeah.
That's the hard thing to do.
I agree. And then, you know, I think they caught on to the plane idea pretty quickly. Like in this movie, I really like the fact that, you know, planes are used, like they stripped planes of all their like unnecessary stuff, and they just use super speed planes, they said, or, you know,
that was interesting.
To keep like communication channels open.
You know what else I was thinking when I was watching this movie, the 1953 version, that like the United Nations was like just recently established. And more than that, it was just recently put to the test in the Korean War. Like the Korean War was the first and last time that like the United Nations like mobilized to act as like a world government to do a thing, because the UN was like technically the ones that were fighting in Korea, not just us. You know, we were part of the UN mission, and that never happened again. But when you think about 1897 trying to coordinate a global
and this is what I was saying in the very beginning, is it seems so bleak, the idea that humanity, like without centralized like communication, can do anything against a power like this. It's just so incredibly bleak. And apparently the screenwriter, or the person who made the script for this one, Kep, K-O-E-P-P, Kep? Yeah. Cope? Sorry. So he like wrote down, I wanted to kind of take humanity back to that time. So that's why we knocked out communication, knocked out all these things. And so, you know, that's one thing, like the centralization is like such an interesting concept. And it was done so well in the 53 version that you hope that something like that would happen in these events. It's kind of like the best you could hope for, which ultimately makes it bleak, because even our best isn't good enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a good movie. I look forward to the next ones. I'm actually optimistic.
Yeah, I was kind of like dreading going through this. I was like, oh, we got to get through this part, but it's actually kind of nice.
Yeah. And so we shall see you next time.